Hello, it's Pete here, and welcome to AI Delve. This time we have Gil Rogers, tech and higher education evangelist, who's going to be talking to us about AI and higher education. Testify. Welcome, Gil. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me on.
It's an absolute pleasure. I'm looking at your background, of course, which is a really good place to start, I think. And I can see that it's like that TV show Through the Keyhole. I can see that you're a sporting man.
Yeah. I used to travel a lot more for work. Not since COVID really as nearly as much, but anytime I go somewhere, I try to pick up a baseball cap at the local baseball park. And so I've been to over half of them, which I'm pretty excited about, but it's been stalled for the past couple of years. I'll work on getting back on that soon.
Oh, so it's baseball games, not just places you visit.
Yeah, mostly baseball games from places I visit. Some of them are just random collector hats, but there's some sort of analogy back there for I wear many hats, so that's why I have many hats in my background. But that's purely just by happenstance.
Great. Well, one day I'll try to understand baseball. I'm not quite there yet. So I'll learn to understand it and then I'll try and see a baseball game.
It's a worthwhile endeavor. I will gladly help you any way I can.
Oh, so you are, where are you in the US?
I'm in Maine, so
Oh,
northeast, so as close to Canada as you can get.
yeah. Okay. So sort of north of Boston and very beautiful, I
Yep.
believe.
Yeah, I'm about I a lot of people when they think about Maine, they think it's like all North Woods, completely middle of nowhere. But I'm about an hour and a half north of Boston. I can get there pretty quickly. It's not too far.
Yeah. So things are about to get very cold.
Yes, we're teetering on the edge of actual winter coming. It's been a beautiful fall and a beautiful summer this year. Last year was very rainy summer, which led to a drab fall. This has been a great kind of actual four seasons type of a year. So pretty happy about
Wow.
it.
Wow. Okay. Things are as they should be. So things are as they should be with you too, of course, aren't they? You've taken a bit of, what do you call it, time out the last few weeks to just to be busy yourself with interesting projects.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting the life of a solopreneur slash CMO for various places, right? I kind of toggle between how do I market my business while also effectively marketing the companies that I'm working with, and so I feel like I'm in a nice sweet spot now where I'm able to kind of manage both from making sure that I'm always looking for the next thing for my company, but also looking for the next thing on behalf of the companies that I serve. Right. And so making sure that, and I feel like my success and client success are two sides to the same coin. Right. So investing in my work is investing in their work. So it's a nice balance to have.
Yeah, and it was really nice. One of the reasons why I was really pleased to talk to you was because you call yourself a student evangelist as opposed to a tech evangelist. What does that mean for you?
Yeah, I think when I started my career, I was an admissions counselor at a college that I went to for undergraduate, right? And so my job was to go out and evangelize on behalf of the institution to get students to want to apply there if it was a good fit and get them to enroll if it was the right place for them, right? And so since working in those types of roles, when I left that side of the desk in higher education, I've always worked on a side of finding ways to best reach, engage, and support students, whether that's working for marketing companies, trying to find and identify students on behalf of institutions. I worked at a company focused on student persistence and retention for about a year, helping them with developing their marketing plan. That's actually what led me to starting my own agency that's focused on ed tech and supporting B2B outreach for those types of companies. But my kind of core tenant has always been making sure that whatever I'm doing or wherever I'm working, it's keeping student success at the forefront of all of those conversations. I think there's a tendency in some places to look at revenue and operating expenses and EBITDA and all those and those are important, right? That's the how, but it's not the why these companies should exist, right? And so I'm again blessed in the space that I am with my company that I started about a year and a half ago that I've been able to focus on companies that are doing things to really help solve the problems that students might be facing, whether it's access to equitable course material or access to online lab programs when they're remote or in a rural area, or helping matching colleges to best fit students. Everything that I do whenever I'm talking to a company about potentially partnering with them, my kind of baseline is the work they're doing solving a problem that helps students be more successful, and if they are, then it's a worthwhile conversation.
So there's some examples that you can talk about of where tech has helped solve problems for students. For example, students um, in places that don't have a great deal of a great population, if you like. So that they're in the hard to reach areas was the phrase I was trying to pull out.
Yeah. So I mean, one of my first partners that I work with was a company called Science Interactive. They're based out of Colorado, and they develop online science courses for colleges and for students, right? And so the way their program works is when you're enrolled in a biology course, let's say, an online biology course is a lot different than an online marketing course when you're talking about the needs for hands-on experiences and curricula. You could study economics on demand online, right? But biology, there's elements where you need to dissect things, you need to have experiments, you have to be able to touch and hold things, right? And so what Science Interactive does is, in addition to the online curriculum, they also develop lab kits that are shipped either to the student's home or their residence hall on a campus, where the institution might not have the resources to build another biology lab because the program has increased in population, but those things take time. Whereas an online kit can come to that student and they get the resources to be able to get that type of an experience. And I think that the value there is that it makes it so that those students, many of these students are at community colleges and they're planning to transfer on to a 4-year school. Without that hands-on piece, that course is not transferable to many 4-year schools. So it solves a problem that those students would likely be facing. And it also solves a problem for the institution that they don't have to invest in building a $25 million biology lab in a year, which is impossible when surge in those types of programs is happening, right? So it fills a gap for them. I think on the other end, with and more recently with things like obviously the proliferation of AI technology that helps to identify students who are at risk of not completing their degree program or not returning the following semester because of behaviors and activity that are or external influencers that are impacting their ability to persist, right? I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I worked at a company that does specifically that. Traditionally, early alert systems predicated on identifying students because faculty say, oh, well, this student hasn't been in class for 6 weeks in a row. I'm going to flag them so student affairs can reach out and try to help and see what's going on. By that point, that student's already gone, right? They're probably so far down a path that they're not going to be able to be helped because it was either financial issue or housing issue or family issue. If that student was identified 2 or 3 weeks prior to that, maybe there's a different outcome, right? And so using technology to help and identify those students, many of which come from financial distress in those types of situations, are a great way to leverage the technology.
Mm. Talking of which, can you talk about ease learning for a little bit then?
Yeah, I mean, Ease Learning was one of my clients. I'm actually rounding off of working with them as a fractional CMO after about 1.5 years, almost 2 years. A very interesting company because what they focus on is developing of online programs for colleges and universities. And a learning design company started as a more boutique type of a space, but they've really focused in on curriculum development, focused on skills and workforce, right? And so I think looking forward into the future of work, updates to curriculum and programming that helps to align institutions to workforce are going to be critical, right? And you can talk about apprenticeship programs, you can talk about internship programs, but also just what students are learning and how they're able to connect the dots. Is it stackable credentials? Is it, these are all areas that many people are thinking about, and Ease has been on kind of the forefront in pushing those types of things forward. They produce resources like one of the things that we recently released is a global rubric for equitable course design, and the whole idea around that is giving faculty at institutions a toolkit to be able to self-evaluate their programs and say, is our content representative of student voice and student perspectives? Are we diverse in our viewpoints? Is our content accessible for disabilities and for students? If it's an online program, screen readers and tab browsing, and these are all elements that oftentimes get overlooked or forgotten, because if you're not impacted by yourself, you don't necessarily keep that at the forefront. So it's a level of accountability and self-accountability. And then of course, ease as a company helps to correct any of those types of issues and challenges in a third party type of a way. Oftentimes, especially with things like DEI in curriculum, you can only do so much introspectively with a self-evaluation. A lot of times you're either not ready to acknowledge the challenges, or you just don't see them because you're not a third party outside looking in. And so that's a lot of the work that the team at Ease does. They also have a talent community that engages with deployed military spouses and retiring military for staff augmentation, subject matter experts for curriculum development. These are people who have tons and tons and tons of training, but are either moving around all the time, so it's hard for them to keep a job in a specific area, or they're transitioning back to workforce and need some support. And so by tapping into that community for much of their work, they're able to support a higher calling beyond just developing courses for schools.
I didn't expect that. What sort of feedback are you getting from the end users and from the client base?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that is extremely valuable for a lot of companies when they're developing, let's say, because it's not just for colleges as well, right? There's professional development programs, continuing education, oftentimes sponsored by companies investing in the development of their workforce, which again is going to be a much more important thing moving forward. The CEO there, Lori Polito, she just presented at the Center for Adult Learner Conference last month or so. And her entire presentation was really focused on how institutions need to invest in mentorship programs internally to help with staff retention, staff development, and growth, right? And so I think these are the things that everybody is more and more ready to hear as the value of a traditional quote unquote 4-year quote unquote education has continued to kind of be questioned, and the place has continued to evolve. I'm still firmly in the camp that there is a place for that traditional version of higher ed, but I also know and understand, and I think most know and understand, that it's not necessarily the path for everyone, right? And there are so many. Learning shouldn't be blocks of time, right? Learning should be a continuous process, and that's something that I think the traditional model has led us to kind of think of, oh, well, I finished high school, now I go to college. I finished college, I go to grad school, or I go to law school, or I go to medical school, or I go to workforce, right? And then once I'm in the workforce, I don't need to learn anything anymore. That's not true. Nobody believes that, right? And so this is kind of that thought process of how do we better support continual education and continual learning. And as technology proliferates, how do we upskill people, reskill people? Because there's jobs. This is cliche at this point because this is said every year for the past 20 years. The jobs 20 years from now don't exist today, right? Mm-hmm. And so if we know that and we understand that, then we need to take action to better prepare the workforce to be ready for that and have a structure in place. That's one of the new companies I'm working with is a company called Immersify. They do a programming specifically for dental education and nursing programs online, right? And so specific resources using AR, IR for immersive type of a program, hence Immersify, great creative name for a company. They're really focused on, really that concept of education 4.0, right? If workforce 4.0 is already kind of on the forefront and people have been thinking about what does the future of work look like? Well, if the future of work is changing, the future of education needs to change, right? Because education, if we're following that in a linear type of a way, which again, it's not a linear process, it's a continuum, but that process would be, we need to be ready to educate people for workforce 4.0, which means adjusting a process or a system that has largely been the same for the past 80 years. And so I feel like with the proliferation of AI, with the just advancement of understanding work-life balance and the flexibility of work with remote working, all of these things kind of coming together at once have really pushed us to think about these sorts of things differently.
Absolutely, and young people, a lot of young people understand that the old ways of doing things are a lie, aren't they? That some people see education as something like a pyramid scheme that they're encouraged to buy into. Yet the
Yeah,
results are.
yeah. And I think a lot of times those, we have there's different philosophies throughout the country and the world about the value of education, but I would say that a lot of times the when you're putting someone on the train of being skeptical of education overall or the value of education, that can, oftentimes is a tactic to suppress people from getting educated, right? And so I think the nice piece of all of that is the nice side effect of all of this, I guess, if you want to look at it this way, is that there are so many opportunities for self-service education out there that you can get educated without going to a traditional route and still learn what you need to learn to be successful in what you're trying to do. Then the catch is getting workforce to catch up with that and say, it's not just the 4-year degree, check a box that you graduated with a bachelor's degree from a college. It's what are your actual skills and what have you actually done and where are the gaps in your skills? And I think honestly, companies, LinkedIn started pushing us down this road years ago, where they start adding to your profile to make it more attractive for jobs. List your skills, list what you're doing. There are platforms out there that are coming online now that use AI and big data to analyze your profile, test you on specific things, and say, hey, you're from an employer perspective, look at a heat map of your company and say, we have gaps, not necessarily individual people, right, but we have gaps overall in understanding of data and analytics, or we have gaps in professional training, or whatever, right? Like you can create and identify what you need to train your team on, and then develop programs to support that, right? And I think that these are resources and technology that has not been quite there yet. And I think over the past year and a half, 2 years, and now in the next year and a half, 2 years, we're going to start to see huge gains in the ability to do that at scale, which will then provide the opportunity for companies to create programming to support the advancement for those people. So there's so much opportunity. It's a green field right now for companies to be able to do this type of work, and it's going to be the ones that master the measurement and know the right questions to ask to then be able to fill those gaps.
There's so much appetite for it, isn't there? And you can see already that younger people are likely or sort of equipped to be able to change jobs. They're sort of economically agile because of a variety of skill sets that they've developed.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's value in specialization, but there's also value in generalization in some respect, right? If you're able and nimble to be able to apply your skills across different verticals. I mean, I work in marketing. That's what I do, right? And so in many respects, marketing is marketing, and it's all about it. My marketing 101 professor in college, I remember first day of class, and this was way too long ago now at this point. I won't even try to think about how long ago that actually was. You can tell by my hair that it was probably a little while ago. But he used to say that marketing is everything and everything is marketing except accounting, right? And I joke because my wife is actually a CPA, and so there's so she fills in the missing skill set, I guess. But if you do too much marketing with accounting, you go to jail for fraud. So that's the reason why it's not part of accounting. But I think if you can apply, if in many respects, marketing is a discipline that takes the ability to understand the buyer, understand their persona, what are their pain points, what are their challenges, and then helping to communicate all of that back to sales and product development. Whatever, doesn't matter what vertical you're in at that point. It's the having a process around all of that. Then it's the strategy around building and effectively reaching your audience, right? And so if you can do that with marketing, you can do that in many fields. It's just about having the right level of training and expertise, and then finding and getting that baseline in that new vertical. And that's, circle it back to ease learning. That's a really great example. I had started my company the January prior to when I started working with ease, and I got connected to ease through a colleague from a prior company. And before joining them, I knew about, this much about learning design, super small amount, because I had worked in marketing and student recruitment and lead generation, demand generation, advertising, those different areas forever. I had never worked in curriculum development, right? That's not my space. But I know this much about marketing in higher education, right? And so I was able to come in and quickly assess the strategy for marketing, and then learned about the nuances of the product and the services as you go. And so it's, again, a similar process for many jobs in many industries, to be able to kind of flip and go to where you can do impactful work. And oftentimes, to go back to the flexibility of work, being able to do it from wherever you sit, right? I think one of the again, positive, I guess, quote unquote, byproducts of COVID has been the acceleration of the advancement of the technology that facilitates and supports remote work, just like it does remote education, right? And I think, again, there's parallels from the real world after college to the life in college, because they oftentimes are one and the same, because there are more people who are enrolled in college than that are outside of the traditional direct from high school to college population than there aren't, right? And so what happens outside of higher ed happens inside higher ed, or at least should, because if you're preparing people for the real world, we should be acting like we're part of the real world.
And it's interesting that you said that there was this, from your point of view, there's a synergy between your background in marketing and what you're pursuing, which is educational technology. And I'm thinking about how many edtech firms boast about being created by educators, yet they can be missing an important piece of the jigsaw.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I think a lot of times when you're working in an ed tech company, it's the built by educators for educators, or built by enrollment professionals for enrollment professionals. And so there's that layer of credibility that they're looking for, right? That says, because, to be fair, when you're talking to, I'll put my hat on of working at, I work with a company called Concept 3D. They're traditionally a virtual tour campus map provider, right? That's their core business, is what they do, is develop those types of platforms for colleges, because most colleges know they need it, but they don't have the resources, knowledge, or time to be able to do it themselves. So you work with a company like Concept 3D to build your awesome map and do those sorts of things. Part of what they have a startup within the company called Flipped App. And Flipped App is what it sounds like. It's a flipped application where colleges apply to students and not the other way around, right? And so the whole idea being that if a student creates a profile similar to like a ZipRecruiter or a LinkedIn, or where they can, say what they're interested in, say what they want to do, say what their passions are, what types of schools they're looking for, colleges know better what type of student is going to be successful on their campus than the students really know. The students are going off of, is there a good pizza place nearby, and have I heard about the football team on TV, right? There's gaps in a student's process when researching colleges. I don't want to understate the value of fit that they get when they're on a campus, but a lot of times they're self-limiting themselves by and maybe undermatching opportunities, because they just don't know about all the great fit opportunities that there are. So colleges on Flipped App use the platform to find and reach out to students who are actively researching for schools, and introduce themselves, again, with the use of AI to help the team. Because when there's 25, 30,000, 40,000 students to be looking through, no admissions counselor is going to spend their day going through and looking at all these profiles. They're going to create lists based off of attributes on those profiles, and then the AI will say to the student, hey, we've got a good match for you. Are you interested in talking, right? And so that whole process is facilitated by the technology that's built by the company. But when you want to talk to a college about it, right, you need to be able to demonstrate credibility in the marketplace and credibility in knowing the audience. So we know, because at this company specifically, they work with marketing departments all the time, because they're developing virtual tours and campus maps. So they know the fiscal year calendar, they know the budgeting cycle, they know the They know the needs and desires of the institution, but they also are smart enough to know that the marketing department and the admissions department are like the marketing department and the sales department at many B2B companies, right? And they don't necessarily talk to each other. They don't necessarily like each other all the time. They know they need to work to get to with each other to some extent, but they don't always play nice, right? And so knowing and understanding the market and reaching out to the right audience is a key part to their strategy, and that's what I've been helping with as far as the admissions and enrollment management versus marketing. But to go back to the whole air of credibility piece, there are a lot of people who never worked at a college that are building Flipped app because they are really good at user experience. They're really good at data measurement, tracking. That's the real value, right? And so, but you do need to, especially in education, demonstrate to the market that you care beyond just trying to make a buck by selling a product, right? And that goes all the way back to your question about being a student evangelist, right? Is at least when I'm evaluating partnering with a company, is what they're doing solving a problem for students that is meaningful and would really make an impact. And if they are, then 9 times out of 10, it works out well for that company, because if you can build something that the students want, use, and value, colleges follow, right? Because they want to be a part of that, whether they're trying to recruit those students, retain those students, better support the outcomes for those students, build curriculum for those students. If the students are there, campuses follow.
What kind of what kind of conversations are you having about AI, about things like opportunities and barriers to those opportunities being fulfilled?
I feel like with AI, the interesting thing is that higher ed, the excuse you hear a lot is moves glacially slow, right? Higher ed moves slower than every other industry, and that's not an unfair assessment. It's true, it really is. However, I feel like the position around AI has evolved much more rapidly than everything else. I'll take it all the way back to when Facebook started, right? Facebook, I was there when I was on a college campus when my roommate came in the room and said, "You need to go on this website and put your email address in because I want to bring this website here because it'll be cool, it'll be fun." Like I was at the University of Hartford the day we got Facebook, right? And it was revolutionary at the time. And then when I was working at the University of New Haven in Connecticut, I was an assistant director of undergraduate admissions, and one of the things I was tasked with was any type of digital platform. I was in charge of that stuff, right? And so we created a page on Facebook. It was actually, at the time, we created a profile for our mascot because there weren't pages. There were no business pages or company pages at the time. The mascot profile got taken down because mascots aren't real people, and Facebook's policy had to be a real person. So there was a whole process along with that. But I remember when when advertising on Facebook and advertising with Google Ads was new, right? And institutions kind of fought that tooth and nail for a very long period of time, because the thought process was, oh, if we're advertising, we look desperate, right? We look like we look like we're in trouble if we're paying for advertising. Meanwhile, we got billboards off the highway. We got billboards in airports. We've got flyers all over the place. We're posters in high schools, but it's Facebook advertising. That was the line for a while, right? And then eventually that wall fell down because institutions realized, no, we need to be engaging and finding students wherever they are, and this is part of that process and part of what we do. Not to mention radio advertising and TV ads and like all these other super high cost, low measure things. Facebook's very measurable, right? Or at least was at that point. Now, fast forward to the past year and a half, 2 years with the growth of AI, ChatGPT, and all these sorts of technologies, it went from ChatGPT is going to take my job to I just need to be good at using ChatGPT to do my job. And that's what's really helped institutions to ideally be more efficient and effective with their time. And I think because of the overworked role that many administrators at higher ed institutions specifically face, they're looking for any way to be more efficient. So I work with a company called HAI Analytics. They do a lot of predictive modeling and data analysis for institutions. there's a need for a human element there because there's that difference between knowledge and wisdom, right? But the grunt work of developing the marketing campaign or outlining the marketing campaign or developing of specific content and refining that content, these are all things that would take hours and hours and hours for admissions officers to do. Now it takes minutes, right? And so the more we can save them time on the redundant work means that they can spend more of their time directly connecting with people, right? Let the robots do the robot work and let the people do the people work. Where it gets fuzzy is when we start having robots doing the people work, like direct outreach and phone calls and those sorts of things. There's still a long way for that to go to be authentic and work.
Like a chatbot on Facebook.
And I think many students they're accepting of like a chat bot, right? If they're just transactionally looking for things, but if they're looking for help, they want to talk to a person, right? And so understanding where that line is super important.
And we're getting there as opposed to being there, aren't we, with ChatGPT? So we're spending a lot of time looking for ways to save time.
Yeah. And I think that's driven by people at colleges and universities and people in technology companies everywhere. They're trying to be as efficient with their time as possible, right? Nobody wants to be coding until 3 o'clock in the morning if they can work on it during the day. And then there's more of a desire to be with family and time and use that. And so the more we can let work be work and let people be people, it's a great delineation. I'm all for it.
Yeah. Oh, yes, completely. Obviously, a lot of people are very frightened of it, and we have conversations about ethics and so on. But that's always going to be the case.
Yeah. Well, and I came across a company the other day that they help students with their college essays, right? But right on the website it says, "We will not write your essay for you. We are here to help you with ideas, and we're here to give you feedback, but we will never use AI to write your college essay," right? And I think students oftentimes, there's this propensity to kind of automatically assume students are cheating all the time, or they're just trying to find shortcuts. And I think that the reality is, and I think more and more people are understanding that students are humans too, right? I think we forget that sometimes. And they're using AI for the same reasons that we use AI in our everyday work. We're trying to be more effective. We're not necessarily 100% sure about what we're working on or about the answer. So we want to confirm it. We want to do the best job that we possibly can. So we're using the tools to produce the best product that we possibly can. It's not that we're lazy and cheating. Like there's always a population of people that do that. But for the most part, it comes from a place of, I am under a lot of pressure for this to be right and perfect because I'm getting graded. If I'm working in medical or dental or those sorts of things, it's got to be like really perfect. I don't have time because I'm working 2 jobs in addition to school, so I'm trying to find things that will accelerate getting to my finished product. It's not because they don't want to learn. Otherwise, they wouldn't enroll in school at all, right? It's because they want to learn rapidly and they want to get to the end result faster.
Absolutely. I always say, whatever you do, don't use ChatGPT to generate stuff. It is generative AI, and if it generates your work, then you're in trouble. But use it as your personal tutor, because it's a great personal tutor.
Yep, absolutely is.
Well, Gil, this has been a fascinating conversation. I'm glad we ended talking about AI because it is called AI Delve, of course. What's next for you?
Well, let's see. I'm working on. There's a couple of new projects that I have coming online, so follow me on LinkedIn to stay in touch on those. But yeah, GR7 Marketing, my company, started it, like I said, about 1.5 years, almost 2 years ago now. I do B2B marketing for founders and ed tech leaders, and so heading into 2025, I've got a close to full plate, but if for the right fun work that's meaningful for students and supporting their success. I'm always looking to add those projects to my list, and my team is growing to help support it.
You're juggling many metaphorical baseball caps, aren't you?
Yes, clearly am.
Well, great talking to you. I'll let you spend some quality time with your dog. So really appreciate your time. What's the dog called?
Oh, the dog is Buttercup.
Oh, Buttercup. Right. Oh, I can see why. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. Great talking to you, Gil.
Great talking to you.
Take care. Speak soon. Bye for now from AI Delve. See ya.